This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Today is the fourth installment of our annual fall series, School Stories. Every Tuesday this month, we're focusing on issues related to Vermont schools. This week, AI in the classroom. Tech companies are investing billions of dollars in data centers to power artificial intelligence. Some of the biggest users of AI are students. Are they using generative AI to cheat or to enhance their learning? Later in the hour, we'll hear from educators in the Essex Westford School District about how adults are trying to figure out a path forward for kids amid this AI revolution. But first, let's go to college, where the students are adults themselves and want to be an active part of these conversations. One example of that is happening right now in a first-year seminar at Middlebury College. It's called AI, Writing, and Creativity. It's being taught by Hector Vila, an associate professor in writing and rhetoric at Middlebury. And he's a writer focused primarily on education and culture himself. Hector, it's great to talk to you.
Great to have me here, Michaela. I really appreciate it.
And listeners, we are so glad to have you here as well. How could colleges help students learn to use AI in a constructive way? Maybe you use generative AI at work and you have an idea to share with today's educators. You can give us a call at 800-639-2211 or send us an email to vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. Now, Hector, to help us kind of set the stage here, I was really interested to read this survey that you passed on to me just a couple days ago that came out in July of this year. It was done by a couple of Middlebury College professors, and it was about how generative AI is being used among Middlebury students these days. Could you share with us what stood out to you from that survey, that data set?
Sure. The survey was done by two colleagues in the economics department, Germán Reyes and Zara Contour. And it's the first look we got to Middlebury youth. And what really stood out for me is really the why students are using AI. And what stood out is up at the top is time pressures. The curriculum is very intense. We have only 12 weeks. There are only a certain amount of hours in the day, and students are either running to sports, outdoor activities, clubs, etc. And there's a lot of material they have to cover in the curriculum. So one of the issues has been finishing work, and so when they're up against a clock, they tend to gravitate to AI to finish things off. The other piece that was interesting to me is the students who refuse to use AI and don't want to use AI at a certain point in their experience. They look at their neighbors and they see that everybody's using AI and they're going to get an A and I'm going to get a B. And so they move towards it. And the third piece which is not necessarily in the survey, but this is what I'm getting from students. When they go out to do internships out into the community and they're working in New York or Boston or Chicago, what have you, the places in which they are interning they're asking them to use AI. So there's the pressure of, how do I use this? Why can't I send an email out to the rest of my department? Why does it have to go through AI first? So they're getting pressure from the curriculum. They're getting pressure from the outside world. So they're leaning into it, if you will.
Ooh, all right. Well, this is all making me glad I graduated many moons ago, but I know there are also lots of moments of possibility here. And that's why I was excited to hear about the freshman first year seminar that you put together, because it seems like you're really trying to help students harness AI and help it kind of fuel their creativity instead of, only being used as a tool to maybe, save time or find the answers quicker rather than relying on their own instinct or knowledge. What are your goals with this seminar?
As I told my class a week ago, my central goal, my most dominant goal in this class is to show them where they have agency. And while AI is a system that purports to give us amazing opportunities, what's really required is vigilance on the part of the user. Why am I using it? How am I using it? Where is it coming from? And also, let's not forget, too, because we forget in these conversations, what's the cost of my use? And that gets us into climate change. That gets us into energy uses, et cetera. So my goal is really agency and to show them that they can manage their digital consumptions rather than simply abiding by what the internet or the structural dynamic is of their interaction. So I want them to think, I want them to have a digital consciousness, if you will.
Mm. And I'm curious to hear more about some of their reasons for shying away from using AI, which you just mentioned. We talk a lot about why students are using it, but some definitely are not. You mentioned environmental concerns. I imagine that might be a reason that lots of students at your college at Middlebury feel very hesitant about it.
That's one, but I think one that trumps the environmental concern is a kind of misguided acceptance of the narrative of creativity. What is creativity? And I started the course that way with a book called The Creative Mind by this phenomenal writer. Her name is Bowden. She died about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And she was a leader in AI and thinking about creativity. And one of the things that students think is that creativity is somehow the romantic poet going out into the wilderness and gets struck by inspiration and sits at the desk and then creates something fantastic. And only special people can be this creative. And only special people get this anointment from the universe. And so we spent the first week actually unpacking what is creativity and how does the imagination work. And they were really not conscious of the fact that we walk through life on a daily basis, minute by minute, doing creative things or thinking creative things. Sometimes it's a readjustment of all things, of different things that suddenly appear different. Or it's a moment of epiphany that I have the epiphany that I've never seen this before, even though perhaps other people have been thinking about this. But for me, that's a creative moment. So moving us into what is creativity for you and how do you think about it, kind of settle them down into this idea of, I really am creative. And just the fact that this morning I got up and I want to look like this and I want to wear that, that's creativity too. So really digging down into what that means became a really important aspect of our conversation. And this is consistent with how we're talking about and how we're thinking about AI, because AI is literally asking us to determine what we are doing. Why are we here? And our President Ian Bokum, in our first faculty meeting, actually asked a wonderful question, which is looking into the future, what is Middlebury College for? Like, why are we here? So AI, because it blends through or cuts through all the walls, the silos, departments, all the instruction, is really asking us to take a moment to ask ourselves why we're delivering education the way we are and why we're not perhaps explaining ourselves better to students and to each other. So that was the first week of classes for me.
That's a big week.
What is creativity?
And I'm also glad I said that's a really big week. I'm also glad that you mentioned Middlebury College's new president. We'll be having him, Ian Bokum, on Vermont Edition in October, as well as the University of Vermont's new president, to talk about their approaches to many aspects of education, higher education, including increasing use of generative AI. Hector, one thing you just brought up that was something that I wanted to ask you about too was this possible identity crisis that I could imagine some professors in college might be having right now, as students use generative AI to write their assignments or do all their research for them, or help them do such a number of different tasks. Do you and your colleagues ever think, like, if kids are just going to use AI to do all their assignments and they can look up the answer to anything online. Like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Are you wrestling with that?
Believe me, as I'm getting closer to the end of my career rather than the beginning of my career, because I started teaching in 1985, I did question it. Is it time for me to retire right now and get out of this before it goes wild? So yes, I think people are realizing that. And if I can go, it's a great question. But I don't know if your listeners remember or have a memory that will take them back to the movie Dead Poets Society with, I forget the name of the actor. But in Dead Poets Society, a student
Robin
goes
Williams.
to visit the...
There we go.
Robin Williams,
I was forgetting too. I needed some help on my end.
A student goes to Robin Williams' office. He's the teacher. And it looks like a monastic cell. And Robin Williams looked at the student and he says, well, you know, what we're asked to do as teachers is we're asked to live like monks. We're asked to sit in our offices, write, produce, create, never talk to anybody, and go out and deliver our information and put it into you. And so that's the classic model. I went through school through that model, and I was instructed that way. So it's what has happened is to all of us is that model that works all the way through graduate education is now being challenged. And as we're being challenged, and nobody likes to be challenged, and some people have a problem with change. So when we find something as powerful as AI, which is challenging every aspect of what we are trained to do, have been trained to do, and believe we're doing correctly, suddenly we find ourselves out in the middle of the ocean. And what we do when we're in the middle of the ocean, we grab for the nearest life preserver, the boat, anybody that will give us any help. And so in higher education, it's I'm going back to the blue books. I'm going back to orals. I'm going back to presentations. No more papers that they can take home. And that's totally understandable, but it's an extreme. We need something to bring us back into the middle. And how can we do all the things we used to do, oral presentations, exams, etc., take-home essays, and work with AI to do to bring it into the classroom to foster a relationship of creativity between texts that we're using, students, and ourselves. It's really changing the role of the professor to be a mentor, an advocate, a researcher, but also someone who begins to better understand the ramifications of the digital consciousness that's being placed upon us by the power of artificial intelligence.
That's a lot to wrestle with, and it's interesting to think about professors relying more on analog activities in the classroom, like having students write in a blue book, because they're trying to help them learn to think for themselves. But then the student might be there saying, hey, I'm never going to get a job where I'm asked to write something down in a blue book. What the heck is this teaching me?
Right.
And speaking of writing, Hector, I know you work closely with peer writing tutors at Middlebury, so students helping
Yes.
other students with their writing. And when you and I first talked, you said that one of the first uses of AI that you really noticed catching on campus was students who were approaching English as a second language and using generative AI to help with their writing. And now tutors are also using it as well to help with their own teaching. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if our peer writing tutors on campus are using AI to help them teach. In my class, the students will certainly be using, I use a tool called Notebook LM for this. They will definitely be using Notebook LM to help them in their peer, the AI will be the peer writing tutor.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. I'm glad.
Yeah. And the reason why I use that particular tool, Notebook LM, which is part of a suite of tools that we have here at Middlebury, is because Notebook LM does not go out into the internet. So you can't say to Notebook LM, please find a good source for this for me in out there in the internet land. It won't do that. The other thing that Notebook LM won't do is if you say to it, I don't like this sentence. Can you revise it for me? It won't do that either. So it works very much like an editor making suggestions. Are you thinking about the right things to get to this point? Maybe you really need to think of what your thesis is. So it prompts questions rather than solutions. But what I'm also doing is having my students go through this process, but also visit with physical peer writing tutors to understand the relationships between the machine, themselves, their process, and then what happens when they visit with a person. What's the difference and what changed and which one do you like, or what are you more comfortable with? So in terms of what I said earlier, my goal of this class, which is digital, to have them have agency in the digital world, is for them to be able to make these choices and to understand when one tool is appropriate, or when a human being is appropriate, or when a combination of things are appropriate. So to be able to make choices that are very, very critical to creative work.
Well, Hector, you have a busy week this week. Not only are you teaching your classes, but also on Thursday and Friday, Middlebury's hosting a symposium that you helped put together, the Clifford Symposium, which is focused this year on moving beyond the hype and fear surrounding AI towards something hopefully more optimistic. That's a little bit of what you and I have been talking about today.
Yeah, it's very optimistic.
Yeah. What's one thing that you're excited about, maybe a speaker or a session at this symposium? And are there ways for the community outside of Middlebury College to get involved in these conversations?
Sure. I would say that the community outside of the college should just Google Clifford Symposium Middlebury College, and you get the whole schedule, which begins 12:30 on Thursday, and it runs through to the end of the day on Friday. We have an array of things being discussed and shown, from climate to writing and education to what alumni are telling us about AI in the world where they're now visiting. And also, how do we coexist with artificial intelligence? So all these things are going to be a part of it. I'm really excited in that it's not a zero-sum game here. It's a nuanced, complex world we're facing. And I think one of the most important things that AI is helping us come to terms with is that we need more conversations like this one that we're having here right now. And we need more people discussing their experiences. And I remember back at the beginning of the internet where people were thinking that, the internet means that we can work wherever we want. We don't have to be anywhere. Space is irrelevant now. Well, what we found out was we actually need more spaces because we actually have to show people what we're doing. AI is putting steroids on that idea. It's so complicated, and we have to be so judicious and understand the nuances of AI that we have to always engage in conversation with each other. So, ironically, the tool that is going to help us come into the future, so AI says, that's going to have amazing opportunities and amazing potential for medicine, for law, for education, etc., actually requires that we begin to converse more so with each other, and most importantly across disciplines, because it's affecting the connectivity that we perhaps denied existed between disciplines. So I teach English, you teach math, you teach sociology, never shall we speak. But now AI is forcing us to think, no, maybe I need to be teaching this class with an economist, or I need to be teaching this class with a biologist. So all these conversations need to be had. So AI is asking us to do more with each other physically together, not less. So that's what I think this conference, this symposium that's coming up on Thursday and through Friday, is asking people to engage with the questions and concerns and your own feelings about this. And they have to be on the table. So AI, while being attacked, let's say, critically as taking away voice and taking away agency, has the potential to give us just the opposite: more voice, more interaction, more humanity.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on, and we're going to keep pulling these threads together and having a conversation in just a moment about how folks at the high school level are trying to help kids learn how to use AI in a way that is constructive, just like you're talking about, Hector. Hector Vila is an associate professor in writing and rhetoric at Middlebury College. Thank you so much for telling us about your work.
Thank you so much for having me, Michaela. This is a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, coming up, to high school we go. We're going to figure out how teens in our region are using AI and how teachers and administrators are trying to regulate it. That's in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lefrak. If you're just joining us, we are talking about how AI is being used in classrooms today. This is the 4th installment in Vermont Edition's fall weekly series on education, School Stories. At the high school level, a couple school districts in our region have created AI policies to help guide their teachers and students. Essex Westford is one of them. We're joined now by 2 employees of the school district focused on digital learning and technology. First, we have Peter Drescher with us, the Director of Technology and Innovation there. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Renee Langevin with us as well, the Digital Learning Leader for Essex Westford's school district. She's also the co-host of Explained, a podcast about AI and education. Renee, welcome.
Thanks for having us, Michaela.
Yeah, and listeners, we would love to hear from you as well. Perhaps you have a kid or a grandkid in high school right now, and you want to know how to talk to them about how they use generative AI. Or perhaps there is a use that you think would be interesting for educators to know about, something you've been trying out in your own work. You can give us a call at 800-639-2211 or send us an email to vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. First, we just heard from a college professor at Middlebury College who's trying to figure out how to work with students on finding constructive uses for AI, especially as they develop their own voices, their own creative voices. I'm curious to hear from you, too, what your thoughts are on what you heard in that conversation. Peter?
We were intrigued by the Clifford Symposium. In fact, maybe we'll talk about that, too, that they're coming up. We're trying to, there was a question about, working on it still, and we're still framing, we built our guidance and we've got that out there. But, these tools are changing all the time. This year, Google opened up some other tools to students at different age groups. And we have so far kind of slowed that down with the students and allow it for teachers. But we're just trying to, make teachers comfortable with how they might use it and begin thinking about having conversations with students and those kinds of things. So, we're going in that direction.
Yeah. So in some ways, you're a bit ahead of the curve. You have this policy in place, but you're also realizing that, the world is changing really, really fast.
Very rapidly.
You don't just create an AI policy and then wipe your hands.
Right.
Far from it.
Right.
Renee, can you tell us a little bit about your job and your work in this area?
Sure. I'm the digital learning leader at Essex High School. So part of what I do is support teachers with all kinds of technology integration in the classroom. And a big topic these days is AI.
Yeah. So we talked about Notebook LM earlier. What are some of the other tools that are specific, types of generative AI that you're trying to figure out right now?
Right. I think we're just starting to dip a toe in with teachers actually using it with students. More teachers have been using it in their professional practice, but with students, trying to use more custom chatbots so teachers are able to create their own chatbots you can do it through School AI or Notebook LM or ChatGPT even, to have the chatbot pull information just from the data that you put in. So teachers may put in a lesson plan or a rubric, and then the student can interact with the chatbot, but the chatbot is only going to pull from what the teacher put in. So that has been something that teachers felt a lot more comfortable with instead of just letting kids loose on AI and having it search the entire internet.
Yeah, but they could still do that at home, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That must be a hard thing, Peter, for you all to try to balance, is figuring out what you do have control of, what you can teach kids about, and what they're just going to go do once they get home.
And at a school environment, we can do what we can do. And yes, at home they have free reign at it, however a parent has decided, to do or not do. But we try to keep that in mind. So I think others in my position, I think many of us now are thinking about the guidance that we can do within our school building, but it's a little bit of a wild world out there when they get home as to what,
right.
how they use it. So, yeah.
Now, you mentioned that students of different age groups can now use certain Google tools.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? You said you were kind of trying to...
and I'm going to get it wrong, and Renee's going to help me. But,
all right, that's why we have you both here.
Google used to have an age restriction on the two tools, Gemini and Notebook LM, and they have removed those age restrictions. It was like 13 and above for one, and 18 above for the other.
Yes.
But now they've removed those age restrictions. So we are trying to take a slow, cautious approach to that because teachers, of course, have access to those things. But before we let it loose on all of our students at every age level, we want to make sure teachers are comfortable with it and then can talk about it. And at some point, I don't think we will forbid it, but at some point we would open it up as teachers are more comfortable with having that conversation with kids and using it. So,
yeah. Renee, anything to add there about those increasing uses of these Google tools?
Right. I think our goal is not to have teachers teach kids how to use AI, and especially at the high school level, they're already using it.
Yeah.
So our goal is to teach kids about AI. So what are the drawbacks of AI? What biases are built into outputs? And then, how to use it responsibly, how to use it ethically, and how to use it so that they're not just, offloading their cognitive thought processes, and that they're actually using it as a tool that's going to enhance their learning.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about cheating here. And listeners, I'd love to hear from you on this one. Be honest with us. Would you be hopping on AI or Chat GPT or Claude if you were in high school right now to cheat on your homework or a test? Think really hard about it. Let us know how you kind of wrestle with this question. You could call it at 800-639-2211. Renee, how big of a problem is this? I feel like it's something that a lot of adults, we talk about and worry about. Are a lot of kids using AI to cheat on their schoolwork?
I can't give you a percentage.
Sure.
I think that studies have shown that it's not any more than it ever has been before AI. With, calculators or when the internet came out, or, it's not any more than that. It's always a conversation. We try to bring it back around to the conversation about academic integrity. So it's really important for teachers to set clear expectations for their students, whether they allow AI use in their class or not, and just following our academic integrity policies.
And Peter,
in our handbook, yes, the academic integrity AI for EWSD, right?
Yeah,
so.
And I imagine there's also an element of trying to. Teachers are always trying to do this if you're a good teacher, but trying to create that really trusting relationship between yourself and a student.
That's a huge part of it. It's something that Renee talks about often, and I talk about often. It's about the relationship you have with your students, and in fact, I can remember a meeting having with English teachers about 18 months ago or so. Seeing just them thinking about the change in assessment that they have and having the process, and them talking about having that relationship with your student, understanding how they might approach a subject or a writing assignment or something like that is very helpful, of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you feel like there are effective tools to help a teacher or an administrator detect if a student is using AI in an improper way?
No, there isn't.
No?
No.
Yeah, we've steered away from that conversation. They're just ineffective.
Yeah, there are a lot of studies that show the effectiveness of these tools. OpenAI actually pulled theirs off the market because it was so ineffective. And it's just shown that it damages those relationships that you were talking about that teachers are trying to create with students. You have to enter with a level of trust and building that relationship. And those tools just they're not accurate enough. There is a tool that one company has called Brisk Teaching called Inspect Writing. And Google had something similar, Draftback, where teachers can see the process of student writing. So, step by step, it creates a little video for you. And that's a nice tool to use with students. And students can access it as well to see their own writing process. So it's not a detection tool, but it's a nice way to see the writing process for students.
And again, it's something that's helping to build that relationship between the student and the teacher, too, and using it.
Yeah. But at the same time, there are some parameters that are being put in place by the school district and by teachers. And I'm thinking here about the new rules at many different schools in our region this year about phones in classrooms. Peter, what are the rules that Essex Westford has about phone use?
Essex Westford, we have not banned phones yet. The high school has a very strict policy about using phone caddies in the rooms, and the students are expected to put them in, and that has gone.
So you put your phone in a special place when class starts.
Yes, and that has gone well. I think they've had success with that. Cell phone policy. I don't know. I'm not sure AI policy.
If they're tied together, well, I mean, I do think if somebody has their phone available in a classroom, they could use AI throughout the class
and in
or
high
in
school,
a test or something like that.
Right. This what we're doing at the high school has helped to mitigate that. So, yeah.
Let's pause for a short break here, but when we come back, I want to hear about some of the ways in which students and teachers' use of generative AI either has surprised you or makes you feel excited, not just nervous. Because I think a lot of us only feel nervous right now. Yeah. We also want to hear from you, too. Are there ways in which you've seen young people, or perhaps you yourself, if you're a student right now, are there ways you're using AI in a way that feels helpful to your learning and exciting and not destructive? Give us a call at 800-639-2211. We'll keep talking AI and education as part of our School Stories series in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lefrak. This hour, we are discussing the use of AI in classrooms. It's the fourth installment in our fall series, School Stories. Every Tuesday this month, we're taking on issues related to Vermont's education system. Our guests this hour are both from the Essex Westford School District. Renee Langevin is the digital learning leader there, and Peter Drescher is the director of technology and innovation. Let's take a call here. We have Gabriella calling in from Burlington. Gabriella, what are your thoughts or questions listening to this conversation?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. My biggest concern is actually not just cheating, although that's obviously very important to be looking into. It's how kids are taught to do research and to determine, critically look at different sources. So I imagine that they're, they've been given an assignment to research a certain topic. And they're hopping on ChatGPT and they're asking about that topic, and then they're taking that answer for granted or just at face value. They're not thinking critically about, okay, where is this search engine getting its information from? Is it good information? And not just them being able to do that, but having the skills to know what to look for. That's, I think, my biggest concern.
That's a great question, Gabriella. Renee, I'm curious for your thoughts there on how students are using AI to research, and is that research that reliable?
I think that it's another tool. It's just another tool, and we have always taught students how to back up their sources and to look for reliable sources. That's part of the digital citizenship. We start that in elementary school in our district, the digital citizenship lessons. I think that we know for a fact that AI does hallucinate or make things up. And so it's that same conversation of checking your sources. So if you're getting some information from a source like ChatGPT, it's backing that up with other resources that are telling you the same thing.
Because what else hallucinates and makes things up is people sometimes too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, AI is a reflection of humanity, isn't it? Yes.
A related question from Paul in Bridport, who wants to know if the guest here today would trust AI as a research tool in education. So this is very related to what Gabriella was saying. Paul writes, this experiment has already been tried, and today students everywhere in the U.S. are told not to trust the internet, especially sites like Wikipedia. What of AI's answers would we trust, and why trust those search results? So yeah, Renee, so that gets back to your question about, which sources that AI is using to trust. Like, who's giving these lessons to students about sourcing? Is it librarians? Is it their teachers? Is it you?
I think it's a mixture, and it depends on the district as well. But definitely in our school, English teachers, because that's where a bulk of the writing is done. Our library staff and me, all of us work together on this. Mm-hmm.
We had a follow-up question from Paul, a real big one, who Paul asks, who in fact is controlling the AI industry in the U.S. and what are their motivations? Now, I don't know if we can answer that here today, Peter, but it does make me wonder about student privacy and security when students are using these AI tools, which are built by these massive tech companies. How does a school keep their data safe?
We adhere to something called the Student Data Privacy Consortium. It's a group that works nationally, and we are a member of that here in Vermont. It works to understand exactly what companies are taking from data from when you sign a contract with a company, what kind of student data they're keeping and using. So we move towards that in our school district, and many school districts in Vermont actually. So that's one way in thinking about that. But these companies have, that's still I would still say that's still being worked on around that side of it with these companies, bigger companies, of course. One of the things is, again, the education piece about, putting information, doing prompts and sending in information, personally and identifiable information into these, the cloud of this of AI. We want students not to do that. So that's the education piece on that side of it. So for sure.
Yeah. You're developing these policies for your school district, while simultaneously other school districts and supervisory unions around Vermont are doing the same. Do you all receive any sort of guidance or support in that process from the state level, from the Agency of Education, or do you coordinate with one another? How does that work?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, yes, there's some great people at the state these days. Josh Bloomberg is taking a role these days of the State Director of Technology at the Agency of Education. He's been a great resource for us. We also have VitalLearn is a professional development organization, and we do a lot of work with the tech directors. I'm on that board. So we have a lot of conversations kind of ad hoc around this stuff. There's definitely support. And Josh has been great. There's an annual survey that goes out to measure some of these things and see what people are doing. There's some resources they're preparing for helping schools do the guidance that they need to do and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Now, Renee, do you have colleagues in other school districts who have similar positions to yours?
Yes.
You could talk to about all this?
Absolutely. I think that, developing a policy, or in our case, we didn't have a policy per se. We have a guideline document because we knew it was going to change so often. I think you definitely need to develop it with your local needs, in the back of your mind. But there are some national organizations that are making this really easy, not easy, but easier for school districts around the country. There's one called Teach AI that has a framework where you can start to develop an AI guideline policy for your district. And I think that just the different things that are happening in Vermont to bringing educators from all different districts together. AI Vermont is one of those organizations.
It's a good one to mention.
VitalLearn has the Vermont Fest Education Technology Summit in Killington in November. And just being able to have conversations, and you thank you so much for mentioning my podcast. I do the podcast with my husband, who works in the Mount Mansfield district, doing the same thing that I do, and also my friend Mike Berry, who is the director of technology and curriculum in Montpelier. So the three of us having our three districts, even to talk about what we're doing in our three districts, has been super helpful.
What are the kind of guests that you have on the podcast? Or is it mostly the three of you kind of tackling one big issue in this area?
No, nobody would want to hear us talk for every episode. No, we have been extremely lucky in the guests that we've talked to. We've talked to people all over the world, and a lot of these people, some are at the higher education level, some are at, the K-12 level, and we've had just really interesting conversations around what's happening, what's happening in other states, what's happening in other countries with AI, what are the governments doing in different countries versus here, and just comparing what we're doing, and how we're all trying to figure this out. That's the common thread, is that we're all feeling confused and, a little bit of urgency around trying to figure this out to protect our kids.
Yeah.
We're excited. A couple of the guests that Renee has had on the Renee and Mike and Sean have had on the podcast are going to be at Vermont Fest this year in early November. So that'll be great. So we'll have a wider audience from Vermont learning from them. Yeah.
Okay,
great.
so that the podcast itself sounds like a very exciting learning opportunity for lots of folks. What are other ways in this area of AI use in the classroom, specifically in Essex Westford, where you both work? What are things that get you excited right now instead of nervous? Peter?
I use the tools a lot. I use ChatGPT a lot just for doing some of my work, and I love the back and forth, that the prompts and being able to refine and do that, and I get excited about that. And then I think about students like learning how to do that and do that well, and also like thinking about when they go to the work world where that's going to be an expectation that they're doing that kind of thing. So I think about like how can we, I guess what gets me excited is thinking about how we can kind of harness that and bring that excitement to that level, so that, because we know that there's companies out there that when students come in the door, they're going to be expected to use it because it's an efficiency tool, a productivity tool. And if we're saying at the high school level, we can't, they're not going to get the job. So, right. That kind of thing. So, yeah.
Renee, what gets you excited about all of this?
I think that there is a lot of opportunity to really be creative with this, and not like in an artistic creative kind of way. That's a whole other conversation. But just being able to rethink some of how learning is done. The public school system in this country has been the same for a long time. And I think that we have an opportunity here to be able to change things up a bit with AI.
Now, I know we talk a lot about adults kind of dragging their heels around AI, but I know there are students, too, who really don't want to use it for a variety of reasons. We talked a little bit about that with Middlebury College professor Hector Vila at the start of this hour. Are you two hearing from any students who flat out refuse to use AI? I see you both nodding. Yeah. Peter, what are you hearing?
I mean, I have not personally heard, but Renee, I talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
At the high school level, students being actually, like fairly negative about using it. Yeah.
Renee, what do you hear?
I think, yes, for sure. I've heard from students that don't want to use it at all. And that is part of our guidelines in our district, is no one is going to be forced to use it. So if teachers decide to use it in their classrooms, they have to understand that they can't force students to use it if they don't want to. There's a lot of really valid reasons, a lot of ethical concerns. Your caller, or it was an emailer caller, brought up, about just who's behind these companies. That's an ethical concern. The environmental piece is an ethical concern. And so it's, that's all valid. And we recognize that everyone has their choice whether they want to engage with it or not.
Yeah. And Leslie, Renee, you had brought up earlier how On your podcast, you're exploring in part some ways in which school systems in other countries are incorporating AI. And we've talked a lot on Vermont Edition over the past 6 or 8 months about how changes at the federal government level here in the U.S. have trickled down to Vermont and affected all sorts of different systems here. And I'm curious if any of those changes, say to the funding for the U.S. Department of Education or anything else at the federal level, is affecting the work that you do right here in Vermont to help kids figure out how to use technology and use AI.
Specific to technology? Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I think we have similar goals in mind to what is being, what we're seeing from the federal government. But I think, being boots on the ground, in the schools, we're the ones that are being a little more cautious about it as well.
And outside technology?
Outside technology?
You said, changes at the federal level. Have they affected your job?
I mean, not me personally, not in the work that I do, but I'm sure it has for a lot of educators.
Yeah. So we're moving forward here with this new school year. Peter, what are some of your goals around AI and your guidebook and this work with teachers and administrators that you're doing for this 2025-2026 school year?
I think just trying to listen to teachers. I mean, that's my goal, is listening to teachers and, building their comfort level in how they use it themselves, building their comfort level in how they talk about it with students, and encouraging, I guess, and building their comfort level at working with students with it. I mean, I think that's the goal that we want to do with AI and EWSD.
Yeah. Well, what's one big goal, Renee, before we have to wrap up today, that you have for this school year?
I think it's what my goal is always in my job is supporting teachers and getting them comfortable in this work so that they can provide the best guidance for students.
Renee Langevin is the digital learning leader at Essex Westford School District. Renee, thank you so much for telling us about the work you're doing on the grounds there.
Happy to be here.
And Peter Drescher is the Director of Technology and Innovation at Essex Westford. Peter, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you, Michaela. It was a pleasure.
It's a whole new world out there. So
it sure is, yes.
We're all still learning. Well, we're going to head outside of the classroom, outside of any building tomorrow, and hit the Long Trail. In tomorrow's show, we're going to be hearing about 2 long-distance hikers who have set records on the Long Trail in the past year for speed. It's going to be really fascinating to hear what their experiences were like on Vermont's trails and hear how they dealt with the elements out there. And you're going to be shocked by how quickly they hiked out there, too. So be sure to check in for that conversation tomorrow on Vermont Edition. We're also going to hear an update on a blockbuster podcast from New Hampshire Public Radio and HPR called Bear Brook. They have some updates to their groundbreaking journalism that they did a few years back. And if you're a true crime fan, I think you're going to want to tune in. All right, that is it for today. If you want to hear more about Vermont Edition's other school stories shows, you can find them in our podcast feed. We have one about school district consolidation, school meals, and sex ed. And next week, we're going to be talking about pre-K. It's our 5th and final installment of School Stories. All right, today's show was directed by Aaliyah Papes. John Ahrens is our managing producer. Andrea Lorian and Daniela Fierro are our producers. Our call screener today was Rick Barrett, and our theme music is by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.